Hello, I'm Julian Northbrook from English.com. One thing I hear from people a lot is that they feel disadvantaged in comparison to native speakers. And they say things like, like you can say, for example, a job interview or a sales situation or a meeting or whatever it happens to be. How can they compete with these people whose first language is English? Like they feel like they're always gonna be at a disadvantage. But really that is quite short-sighted, because if you think about it, like it's only one part of the equation is your linguistic ability. And first of all, native speakers aren't necessarily actually that good at speaking their first language. Yes, they speak it fluently as their first language, but it doesn't mean they're actually, particularly good when it comes to the skill and the technique of communication. And, a non-native speaker can learn that just like a native speaker can. But okay, let me give you an example. Perhaps a rather bizarre analogy, but I believe to be a good one. Yesterday, we watched Frozen, like the original Frozen film again. And obviously I've got kids, I've got a daughter. I've seen that film a billion times. Just before I went to Taipei, we also went to the cinema to see Frozen 2. Now, if you've seen these two films, you'll know that they are really quite different. The first film, and this is my opinion, film critics among you may disagree, but from the way that I saw it is that Frozen 1 is about the songs. Like, the songs in the film are what give the film its tremendous impact, especially Elsa's, legendary Let It Go song. And basically, it doesn't matter whether you've got kids or not, you've heard the song. I don't think there's anybody on this entire planet who has not heard that song at some point. And it was those songs that really gave it the impact that it had as a film. Well, when I saw the second film, the impression that I got is that the producers, the makers, the writers, Disney, whoever it was, kind of realized that they wouldn't be able to beat the original by doing the same thing again. Like, if they tried to fight fire with fire, as it were, they'd lose, because the first film, those songs had a huge, enormous impact, and you just couldn't beat that. So the impression I got is that they didn't even try to. Instead, they picked at what the first film didn't do particularly well. And from my perspective, that was the storyline. The story was okay, don't get me wrong, but it was quite weak. It really was just a series of songs loosely strung together by a fairly weak storyline. Whereas the second film is really quite well written. The story is really quite well developed, and it takes the concepts from the first film and it contextualizes them and it gives them deeper meaning, but it also goes beyond that, and it becomes a very, very strong story in and of itself. So I think that's what they've tried to do. Instead of trying to beat what they did in the original, they've taken it from a different angle and created a masterpiece in a different kind of way. Well, when you are using English in whatever situations you're using them, that's what you need to be thinking in terms of as well. Sure, you can't beat a native speaker in terms of raw fluency in the language. You can. If you really get to the highest of the highest levels, and you're confronted with not very intelligent native speakers who are pretty shit at using the language, I guess you can. But instead, think about what else can you bring to the table. What do you have of value that you can bring to a meeting, to a negotiation, to a sales situation, to whatever it is that you're doing, and go from that perspective instead. So, for example, one thing that you have that nobody else, a native speaker, can't bring, is your own cultural background. because by definition, somebody who is using English as a first language, like they all come from that same cultural background. Whereas if you have like a different way of thinking, a different perspective, diverse perspectives on an issue, well, you bring something which they don't. So compete with what you've got, not with what you don't have, if that makes sense. Find the things that are your strengths and use those to make up the weaknesses that you might have. Now, of course, this is no excuse not to work on your English, not to improve your English and not to master the language. I mean, like, yeah, use what you've got, but also, develop what you don't as well. And that's where people like me come in. Head over to doingenglish.com and sign up for my free daily emails every single day at about 8 a.m. Island time. Not always, but usually. You'll get an email packed with all kinds of hints, tips, ideas, and good stuff from yours truly for mastering the English language fast. This is me, Julian Northbrook, signing out from another video. Bye-bye.